When my son banned me from Christmas dinner, I didn't send a threat. I sent a structural failure by canceling the $2,800 payment that kept his family's expensive life afloat. The ensuing battle over his house became a public strategic chess game to recover my $237 now $268 and my dignity. Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. The moment my son Daniel told me I was not welcome for Christmas, the air froze around Serena's fancy vanilla candles. I smiled, a cold, hard pull across my mouth that felt more like a physical wound than a reaction. Then I stood up from his leather couch. This wasn't just a slight. It was the final structural failure of a life I'd spent 5 years shoring up with my own money. Dad, unfortunately, you won't be welcome here for Christmas. Daniel couldn't meet my eyes. He stared at the marble coffee table I'd helped him pick out, the one Serena insisted was more sophisticated than anything they'd owned before. He looked small, bracing himself for the impact of a blow that never landed. I just blinked, the scent of sage stuffing, which I'd planned to make in honor of my late wife Clara, suddenly replaced by the sharp, bitter scent of betrayal. They'd prefer if you weren't here. That's what he said about Serena's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Sinclair. They'd prefer. The phrase tasted like rust in my mouth. I looked around the room, every perfect polished surface a monument to my financial stupidity. The silk curtains, the imported hardwood floors, the crown molding, every single piece bought with my sweat, my credit, or my retirement. It's just easier this way, Dad. They have their own way of doing things. His voice was shrinking, the words getting smaller as he tried to disappear inside his expensive sweater. Their own way, I repeated, the sound quiet, controlled. I saw the flash of the $2,000 KitchenAid mixer through the archway, professional grade, used twice for a 3-week holiday baking phase Serena had declared essential. It was sitting there, shining, mocking me. Where will I spend Christmas then? I asked. Daniel's face crumbled, the fragile facade of his convenient life cracking. Maybe visit Tia Elena, or we could do something the weekend after. The weekend after. Like I was a rescheduled oil change. I didn't turn around as I reached the solid, cold doorknob. Son, I said, tell Serena's parents. Feliz Navidad. I stepped out into the December cold of Riverton. Behind me, the door clicked shut, soft and absolute, sealing 5 years of history behind a locked barrier. I sat in my truck, watching the expensive lights twinkle on the house I'd bought, but was forbidden to enter. My phone buzzed. Daniel, already regretting the cleanup he'd have to do. I ignored it. Instead, I drove. Every street corner held memories of the fool I used to be, the man who believed family meant accepting any cost. The numbers started spinning in my head, $2,800 every single month, vanishing from my account into theirs. The total now sat at over $140,000, more than Clara and I had saved in our life insurance and retirement fund combined. Gone. I pressed the accelerator. The truck growled, matching my simmering rage. I pulled into my own driveway, the cracked concrete a reminder of the repair I couldn't afford because of their perfect suburban fantasy. Inside, the phone was ringing again. Serena's name on the screen. Perfect timing. I answered, letting her wait just long enough to feel the first pinch of my absence. Arturo. Her voice dripped with the false buttery sweetness she saved for financial requests. I heard about the little misunderstanding with Daniel, she said. There is no misunderstanding, Serena, I said, leaning against my old kitchen counter. Your position was clear. Look, I know this seems harsh, but my parents are very traditional. They expect a certain atmosphere during the holidays. And what atmosphere is that? I asked, my voice steady, the cold of the doorknob still in my palm. I heard shopping bags rustling, probably spending money that should have gone toward the mortgage I was covering. Well, she sighed, the rustling stopping. They're not used to your kind of cooking, all that spicy food and loud music. And frankly, Arturo, they're educated people. They expect conversations about current events, literature, art. You know. What exactly would you contribute? Stories about laying tile? The insult, perfectly aimed, hit me with a jolt of heat in my chest. 8 years of swallowing my pride, pretending not to notice her condescension. My kind of cooking, I repeated. You mean the food you ate every Sunday for 3 years when money was tight? The tamales you said reminded you of your grandmother? The sweetness was gone now. That was different. Now with my parents, you can't have the Mexican peasant embarrassing you at your fancy dinner table. She had crossed the line I never knew existed. My blood went cold. What did you say about my wife, Clara? I'm just saying she knew how to blend in better. She didn't make waves. She understood that some spaces weren't meant for her. My hand tightened around the phone, the cheap plastic creaking. Clara had more class in her little finger than your entire bloodline will ever possess. Oh, please. She was a house cleaner who got lucky. At least she had the good sense to stay quiet about it. I dropped my voice to a dangerous low sound. Serena, listen very carefully. This conversation is over. We're done pretending to be family. You can't just... We're done, I said, and ended the call. I walked to my desk, pulled out the manila folder I'd been avoiding for months. Bank statements, mortgage papers, 5 years of automatic transfers that had bled me dry. Time to stop the bleeding. I reached for my phone, scrolling to the number for the bank, the one that managed the Wells Fargo account. I smiled when I heard the click of the lock engage, but the real work started with the number I was about to dial. The documents looked like evidence spread across my old Formica kitchen table. 5 years of bank statements, each one a ledger of my own stupidity. $2,800 on the 15th of every month, vanishing like dust into the City National Bank account ending in 7423. I pulled out my calculator, an old one from my construction days, the keys sticky with dust and time. I started adding, the numbers rolling like a slow, painful ticker tape. The first year, $33,000 through $600. The second year, another $33,000 to $600. By the third year, I'd stopped buying myself new work clothes. The fourth year, I was shopping at discount grocery stores. The fifth year, I was eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch to make ends meet while they hosted catered dinner parties. The total on the small screen felt enormous, crushing, a $143,400 in mortgage payments alone, not counting the $47,000 down payment from my home equity loan, not counting the utilities I'd covered, not counting the new roof, the landscaping, and the furniture they needed for their lifestyle. I sat back, the chair groaning under my weight. Clara's life insurance, the college fund we dreamed of for the grandchildren I was now barred from seeing, all of it poured into a house where I wasn't welcome for Christmas dinner. The cost wasn't just financial, it was structural. My life had a massive leak, and the money was the water. I reached for the phone. It took 4 minutes navigating the automated system before a real person answered. Customer service, this is Jennifer. How can I help you today? I need to cancel an automatic transfer, I said, my voice steady, professional, like I was ordering a load of drywall. Certainly, sir. Account number and verification, please. I rattled off the numbers. The transaction appeared on her screen. I see the transfer you're referring to, Mr. Reyes. $2,800 monthly to City National Bank, account ending in 7423. You've been making this transfer for 5 years, and I want to cancel it, effective immediately. I looked at my cracked kitchen tiles, the old appliances. I could fix all of this now. I could afford my own life again. Done. The transfer has been canceled. Is there anything else I can help you with today? No, I said. The word was a revelation, a sudden lightness in my lungs. No. That was everything. I hung up. Silence filled the house. Not the lonely kind, but the earned, intentional kind. I gathered up the evidence, the bank statements, the canceled checks, the mortgage papers, and walked to the fireplace. I lit a match and watched 5 years of martyrdom curl into ash. The fire felt warmer than I had in a long time. I poured myself a glass of the good whiskey, the bottle I'd been saving for an occasion that had finally arrived. I raised the glass to Clara's photograph on the mantel. Merry Christmas to me, I thought, and meant it. The next morning, December 22nd, was crisp and bright. The peace lasted until 10:47 a.m. when Serena's name flashed on my phone again. Arturo, her voice was pure command. I need you to pick up my parents from Riverton Airport. Their flight from Portland arrives at 2 auk. I set my coffee mug down carefully. Serena, did you forget our conversation yesterday? Whatever that was about, we need to focus on practical matters now. My parents need transportation, and you're the only one with time during the day. The audacity was breathtaking. Barred from Christmas dinner, yet expected to serve as their personal chauffeur. Because that's what family does, she'd sneered. And you're asking me because that's what family does, Dennis, she snapped, using my original name by accident, then correcting it quickly. Arturo, they help each other. Besides, let's be honest here. You're too weak to be my rival. Just get in your truck and pick them up. What airline? I asked, my voice dangerously even. My pulse spiked, but my hand was steady. Alaska Air Flight 447, baggage claim Carousel 3, and Arturo, they're expecting someone who can handle their luggage properly. Don't embarrass us. I heard her nails tapping against something hard, probably the granite countertop I'd funded. Of course, I said. I'll take care of everything. I hung up, went to the living room, and opened the newspaper. 7 across, 12 letters. Delayed gratification. The answer would come to me, eventually. I looked at the clock. 10:52 a.m. Plenty of time. She expected me to move mountains, but all I planned to move was my thumb and the off button. At 2:15 p.m., I was settled into my new armchair, the Spokane Review, no, the Riverton Herald. Sunday edition open to the sports section. I'd finished the crossword puzzle. Postponement had fit perfectly. The clock ticked on the wall, silent and unforgiving. Serena's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Sinclair, were landing right now, exactly on time. My phone lay face down on the coffee table. The buzzing started at 2:47 p.m. A text preview flashed. Dad, where are you? My parents are... I returned to the Seahawks article. The silence in my house felt earned, intentional. The scent of my Earl Grey tea was a world away from the Sinclairs' likely stress at baggage claim 3. Every dollar I'd spent on that tea was mine. Every minute I spent relaxing was freedom. By 3:30, my phone had buzzed 6 times. I'd finished the entire paper and was organizing the junk drawer, tossing out old receipts and useless keys, an analogy for my last 5 years. It was amazing what you could accomplish when you weren't rushing around to serve people who treated you like a personal bellhop. The 7th call came at 3:45. It was an unknown number, likely Mr. Sinclair, borrowing a phone from a helpful stranger. I let it ring. Outside, a neighbor was hanging lights, his children laughing. Normal families doing normal things. No one was stranded, waiting for a personal servant who would never come. At 4:15 p.m., the buzzing became constant, a trapped wasp hitting the glass. I walked to the kitchen and unplugged my landline. Then, I turned my cell phone completely off. Perfect, beautiful silence. I made myself a grilled cheese sandwich and heated a can of tomato soup. Comfort food I'd denied myself for months because every grocery dollar had subsidized their lifestyle. The soup tasted like victory. By 5 p.m., I was reaching for the remote to choose a movie when the furious pounding started on my front door. Not a knock, but an aggressive hammering that rattled the frame and demanded a confrontation. I walked slowly toward the sound, knowing exactly who stood on the other side. I opened the door to find Mr. Sinclair's face, usually composed, now purple with rage, inches from mine. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he bellowed, pushing past me into my hallway without invitation. "We waited at that goddamn airport for over 3 hours." Mrs. Sinclair followed, her designer coat wrinkled, her perfect composure shattered. "This is completely unacceptable behavior, Arturo. Absolutely barbaric." Serena brought up the rear, her mascara smeared. "You humiliated us. Do you have any idea what you've done? My parents had to take a $40 taxi because you decided to get even." My voice sliced through their chorus like a circular saw through soft wood. They stopped mid-rant, shocked by the steel in my tone. "Excuse me," I said. Mr. Sinclair looked ready to explode. "You don't get to make demands here, buddy. Not after what you pulled today." "This is my house," I said quietly, holding my ground, "and I want you out, now." Mrs. Sinclair stepped forward, her voice dripping with the familiar hateful condescension. Arturo, you clearly don't understand the magnitude of your mistake. My husband has connections throughout this city. Business connections, social connections. You can't treat people like us this way and expect— This was a lesson for you, I interrupted, meeting her gaze steadily. A lesson about excessive arrogance and poor treatment of people you consider beneath you. Serena's jaw dropped. A lesson? Who do you think you are to teach anyone anything? I'm someone who finally stopped being your personal bank account and taxi service. I stepped aside and held the door wider, the frame cold beneath my hand. The lesson is over. You can leave. Mr. Sinclair jabbed a finger toward my chest, stopping just short of touching me. You have no idea who you're messing with, old man. I know people, important people, people who can make your life very, very difficult. Is that a threat, Mr. Sinclair? It's a promise, he hissed. You think abandoning elderly people at an airport is just something you can do without consequences? You're about to learn exactly how wrong you are. Mrs. Sinclair nodded, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. Indeed, actions have consequences, Arturo, and yours will be quite public. They filed out like a defeated army, but Mr. Sinclair turned back at the threshold, his face a mask of purple fury. You'll regret this, he said. I guarantee it. I closed the door behind them and turned the deadbolt with a final satisfying click. They drove away, promising to ruin me, and I realized they were already too late. They had only just started the war. 3 days later, I was enjoying my morning coffee and scanning the Riverton Herald when my face stared back at me from page 3. The headline hit me like a misplaced hammer. Riverton businessman abandons elderly couple at airport during holiday storm. My hands went still on the mug, the ceramics suddenly slick with sweat. There I was, an old photo from my contracting company's website, looking 5 years younger and 5 times more naive. Below it, a story that made my blood run cold. Mr. and Mrs. Sinclair, visiting their daughter for Christmas, were left stranded at the airport for over 4 hours when family member Arturo Reyes failed to appear for a prearranged pickup. The couple, the article stated, both in their late 50s, waited in frigid temperatures as a winter storm warning was issued for the region. Frigid temperatures? I looked out the window. It was 52 degrees and sunny, a classic calculated lie. We couldn't believe someone would just abandon us like that, Mr. Sinclair, a retired banking executive, was quoted. We were forced to take an expensive taxi in dangerous weather conditions. At our age, this kind of treatment is not just inconsiderate, it's dangerous. The piece continued, citing concerns about my erratic behavior and mental state. Mr. Sinclair had painted himself and his wife as helpless victims of a cruel old man who had snapped without provocation. No mention of the Christmas dinner rejection. No context about Serena's demands. Not a single word about the 5 years of financial exploitation. Just me, the villain who abandoned poor elderly tourists during a fictional blizzard. The byline belonged to Lisa Wells, lifestyle editor. I recognized the strategy. Mr. Sinclair had called in favors, used his banking connections to plant this story exactly where it would inflict maximum damage. In a small city like Riverton, reputation was structural integrity, and he'd just delivered a wrecking ball. They weren't just entitled parasites throwing tantrums, they were strategic. They had declared total war. I folded the newspaper carefully, respect mixed with a burning, clear-eyed rage. If they wanted to play chess, I'd show them what a master builder did when his reputation was on the line. I opened my laptop and began typing names into search engines. Cody Jenkins, Catherine Jenkins. No, Mr. and Mrs. Sinclair. Serena's social profiles, their connections, their habits, their weaknesses. Mr. Sinclair. Retired First National Bank manager, Spokane Country Club. No, Riverton Country Club. Treasurer of the Inland Northwest Business Leaders Association. A man who'd spent his career in positions of trust and influence, a man with everything to lose. Mrs. Sinclair's Instagram was a perfect gallery of curated luxury, charity luncheons, wine tastings, vacation photos, tagged entire blessed life, all built in part on my money. Serena's Facebook timeline showed the real story, photos of our beautiful home with check-ins at expensive restaurants during the months when I'd covered their utility bills. But it was Daniel's LinkedIn profile that gave me the final necessary piece of leverage. His recent activity showed a new connection. Lisa Wells, lifestyle editor at the Riverton Herald. The same Lisa Wells who wrote the hit piece. I leaned back. The story hadn't just appeared. It had been planted carefully and deliberately. Amateur hour. I opened a new document and began typing. Not a rebuttal, but a structural analysis, a financial timeline, 5 years of support documented with bank statements, receipts, and canceled checks. The down payment for their house, $47,000 from my home equity loan. The kitchen renovation, $18,000 from my maxed out credit card. 60 monthly mortgage payments of $2,800 each, $168,000. The total stood at $237,468, $250,000 I'd spent on them. By evening, I had everything organized in a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. Bank statements, receipts, and photos showing off the lifestyle I'd funded. I looked at my wall calendar. December 24th was circled in red. Christmas Eve. Serena and Daniel's social media said they were hosting a massive Christmas dinner for 12 people. Family, friends, neighbors. The exact kind of people who read the Riverton Herald and had already formed an opinion about Arturo Reyes. I closed my laptop and walked to the closet for my good camera. The one I used to document job sites for my business. Tomorrow, I would put it to work documenting something else entirely. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve. Mr. Scene. Sinclair and his family were about to learn what happened when you declared war on someone who actually knew how to fight. Christmas Eve morning was gray and cold, the kind of day that made a warm house feel like a lifeline. Too bad I wouldn't be welcome in the one I'd subsidized. My evidence packets lay ready, organized like legal exhibits for a major trial. Bank statements highlighted in yellow, receipts showing the pattern of support, photos of Serena's expensive jewelry and the house I'd paid for. Everything copied 12 times, one for each guest. The newspaper article was on top of each stack, my red pen notes visible in the margins. Lie written next to Mr. Sinclair's quote about dangerous weather. False beside the claim of my erratic behavior. Missing context highlighting where they conveniently failed to mention 5 years of financial support totaling $237,468. I dressed carefully in my navy blue suit, the one I'd worn to Clara's funeral, pressed and ready for a different kind of farewell. Today, I was saying goodbye to the man who'd been a doormat. Tonight, I would be someone who commanded respect. This was my final building inspection. At 6:30 p.m., I loaded my briefcase with the 12 evidence packets and drove to Kendall Yards. Daniel and Serena's house glowed with warm light, cars filling the driveway and lining the street. Through the front windows, I could see figures moving around the dining room, Serena playing the elegant hostess in the home my money had helped them buy. I checked my watch. 6:45 p.m. Perfect timing. Late enough that everyone would be seated for dinner. Early enough that they'd still be on the main course. No easy escape for anyone. The front door was, of course, unlocked. Serena loved to show off how safe their neighborhood was, how secure their privileged life felt. I let myself in quietly. The warm air hit my face, heavy with the scent of pine and roast turkey, along with the sounds of laughter and conversation. Then I heard Mrs. Sinclair's voice. "But, darling, that's not how we do things in our family." Our family, after everything they'd done to exclude me from it. I walked into the dining room carrying my briefcase. 12 faces turned toward me, expressions ranging from surprise to horror. Serena froze with her wine glass halfway to her lips. Daniel's face went pale. Mr. and Mrs. Sinclair looked like they'd seen a ghost in a navy blue suit. "Good evening, everyone," I said calmly, setting my briefcase on the marble sideboard. "I hope you don't mind me joining your Christmas celebration." Serena found her voice first, high and strained. "Arturo, this is completely inappropriate. You need to leave immediately." "Actually," I said, opening my briefcase and pulling out the first stack of papers. I think your guests deserve to know who really paid for this dinner, this house, and this lifestyle you've been showing off. A woman I didn't recognize, one of Mrs. Sinclair's charity friends, leaned forward with curiosity. What is he talking about, Serena? He's having some kind of episode, Serena said quickly. Daniel, call someone. But I was already moving around the table, placing an identical packet in front of each guest. Here are the bank records, I said conversationally. 5 years of financial support, $168,000 in mortgage payments alone, plus the down payment, renovations, furniture, appliances, everything you see around you. The room went silent except for the rustling of paper as 12 people began examining the evidence. I watched their faces change as they absorbed the numbers, the dates, the undeniable proof of my generosity and their deep deception. This is, one man started, staring at a bank statement, then stopped. Outrageous, finished the woman across from him. Serena, why didn't you tell us any of this? Serena's composure cracked completely. It's more complicated than it looks. Arturo volunteered to help us. We never asked for... Actually, I interrupted, pulling out the Riverton Herald article. Let's talk about what you did ask for, and what you told the media about me. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. I placed copies of the unflattering article on the table, watching the guests recognize my photo. Now, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silence. Let's talk about the real manipulators in this family. Mr. Sinclair's face was ashen. Mrs. Sinclair sat rigid in her chair. Mr. Sinclair here used his banking connections to plant this story, I continued, tapping the newspaper. Notice how I'm portrayed as unstable and dangerous, abandoning poor elderly people in freezing weather. A gray-haired man in an expensive sweater looked up from the article. Cody, Mr. Sinclair, what is this about? The weather was 52 degrees and sunny, I said before he could answer. And they weren't stranded tourists. They were Serena's parents, coming to the Christmas dinner I'd been banned from attending because I wasn't good enough for their company. Mrs. Sinclair finally found her voice, strained and weak. That's not... We never said... You never said what, Mrs. Sinclair? I pulled out my phone where I'd screenshotted several of Serena's social media posts. That I was too low class for your parents. That my Mexican food and working class conversation would embarrass you in front of your educated friends? The woman from the charity leaned back, shifting uncomfortably. Catherine, Mrs. Sinclair, surely you didn't... He's twisting everything, Mr. Sinclair blustered, but his voice lacked conviction. This man has serious mental health issues, the stress of aging, financial problems. Financial problems? I almost laughed. Sinclair, I've been supporting your daughter and son-in-law to the tune of nearly $3,000 a month for 5 years. The only financial problems here are the ones you're about to have. I turned to address the entire table. These people have taken over $200,000 from me while calling me names behind my back. They manipulated my son against me, banned me from family gatherings, and when I finally stood up for myself, they tried to destroy my reputation in the newspaper. Daniel spoke for the first time, his voice barely a whisper. Dad, I didn't know about the newspaper. Your wife knew, I said quietly, and her parents orchestrated it. They turned me into a villain for refusing to be their personal ATM and chauffeur. The social dynamic shifted like tectonic plates. The guests were disgusted. This is unconscionable, said the elderly woman in pearls. How could you let your daughter take advantage of this man's generosity, then attack him publicly when he stopped enabling it? Serena made one last desperate attempt. Everyone, please, this is a family matter that's gotten out of hand. No, I said firmly. This stopped being a family matter when you made it public, when you used the newspaper to attack my character, when you decided my reputation was acceptable collateral damage for your pride. I wanted you all to know the truth before you read about Arturo Reyes in the paper again, because you will read about me again, but next time, it'll be the real story. I closed my briefcase and straightened my tie. Enjoy the rest of your dinner. It's the last one I'll be paying for. The eruption was the most beautiful music I'd ever heard, but I knew the final movement would be played by the bank. My mom, The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, delivered by certified mail, and carrying the weight of legal consequences behind every word. I signed for it at my front door, noting how the spring air smelled of new growth and possibility, not the desperation of December. The envelope read, "Notice of default. Final demand for payment." Inside, 3 months of missed mortgage payments had finally caught up with Daniel and Serena. They were $8,400 in arrears, with only 14 days to bring the account current or face foreclosure proceedings on the house I'd helped them buy. I set the letter aside and returned to my coffee, reading it the way you'd read news about distant weather. Interesting, but no longer my problem. My phone had been ringing for weeks, with increasingly frantic, desperate calls. Serena's number was blocked after the first hysterical voicemail. Mr. and Mrs. Sinclair's social standing in Riverton had evaporated like morning mist after their Christmas dinner humiliation. Their calls were now rare and pathetic. Even Daniel's calls, which I'd been ignoring out of a mixture of anger and grim curiosity, were getting weaker. The question was, how long would it take him to swallow his pride? The answer, apparently, was 97 days. He knocked on my door that Thursday evening, no longer the confident man who'd excluded me from Christmas dinner, but someone who looked like he'd aged a decade in 3 months. Dark circles under his eyes, his expensive suit wrinkled, the smell of desperation clinging to him like cheap cologne. "Dad," he said when I opened the door, "we need to talk." I stepped aside to let him in, watching him look around my house like he was seeing it for the first time. The new furniture I'd bought with my first mortgage-free paycheck, the fresh paint on walls that hadn't been updated in 8 years because every spare dollar had gone to his lifestyle, the repairs I'd finally been able to afford now that I wasn't subsidizing someone else's American dream. "Nice place," he said quietly. "It's what happens when you spend money on yourself instead of people who don't appreciate it," I replied. I settled into my new recliner. "Coffee?" He shook his head, perching on the edge of my couch like he was afraid to get comfortable. "Dad, I need you to know how sorry I am about everything. Christmas dinner, the newspaper article, the way Serena, the way we treated you." "Go on." "I didn't know about Mr. Sinclair planning that story. I swear I didn't." He ran his hands through his hair. "The things they said about you behind your back, the way they talked about our family, about Mom's memory." My jaw tightened at the mention of Clara. I kept my voice level. "And what exactly did they say about your mother? That she knew her place better than you knew yours, that she understood boundaries." He couldn't meet my eyes. "I should have defended you. I should have stood up to them years ago." "Yes," I said simply. "You should have." The weight of 5 years of mistakes filled the space between us. Outside, I could hear my neighbor mowing his lawn, the normal sounds of a normal evening in a normal neighborhood. "The house is in foreclosure," Daniel finally admitted. "I know. We can't make the payments without—" He stopped, realizing how that sounded. "Without my help," I finished. "Without the $2,800 a month I was sending, while you let your wife's family treat me like garbage." I leaned forward, making sure he was looking at me. "Do you know how much money I sent you over 5 years?" He nodded miserably. "Serena calculated it after Christmas, the mortgage payments, the down payment, everything else." "Over $200,000. $237,468, I corrected. "I know the exact amount because I finally did something I should have done years ago." I added it up. His face crumpled. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this." "You can't fix it, son," I said. "That money is gone. But more importantly, those 5 years are gone. 5 years when I could have been building a relationship with you instead of funding your wife's fantasy life." I know that now." He looked up at me, a flicker of desperate hope in his eyes. "But maybe we could start over. Maybe there's a way to—" "Are you asking me to resume the mortgage payments?" The hope died immediately. "We're going to lose everything, Dad. The house, Serena's respect for me, her parents' approval. I don't know what I'll do." "You'll figure it out," I said, not unkindly. "The same way I figured out how to live without a son who respected me. The same way I learned to spend Christmas alone." He started to cry then, quietly, like a man who'd run out of options. I lost you, didn't I? I chose them over you, and now I've lost you forever. I watched him. Daniel, you didn't lose me. You gave me away. There's a difference. He wiped his eyes. Is there any chance, any way you could forgive me? I forgave you months ago, I said, and meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back to the way things were. It doesn't mean pretending this didn't happen, or that I'm going to resume paying for a lifestyle that came with the condition that I be grateful for scraps of your attention. I closed the door on him, but the man I thought I'd defeated was still standing right outside. Then what does it mean? Daniel asked, his shoulders slumped beneath his wrinkled suit. I stood up and walked to my mantel, where Clara's photo sat next to a new picture. It was me with Tia Elena and her family at Easter dinner, the first holiday I'd spent with people who actually wanted me there. This picture was a tangible change, a consequence of my decision to stop funding Daniel's fantasy. It means that if you want a relationship with me, you'll have to build it from scratch, I told him, turning back. It means showing me respect instead of demanding I earn it. It means making choices based on what's right, not what's convenient. My voice hardened, putting the foundation down. And it means that the next time someone, your wife, her parents, anyone, tries to exclude me from family gatherings, you'll remember who actually acts like family. He nodded slowly, understanding perhaps for the first time that respect wasn't something you could take for granted. The house, he asked quietly, isn't my problem anymore? I sat back down, feeling lighter than I had in years. You're a grown man, Daniel. Figure it out like grown men do. Get a job that pays enough to cover your bills. Sell the house and buy something you can afford. Stop living beyond your means and expecting other people to subsidize your choices. He stood up slowly, his shoulders straightening for the first time since he'd arrived. You're right about all of it. I know. He walked to the door, then turned back, that shame still heavy on him. Dad, for what it's worth, seeing you stand up for yourself at Christmas dinner, I was proud of you. Embarrassed and angry, but proud too. Good, I said. Maybe there's hope for you yet. After he left, I poured myself a whiskey and stepped onto the back porch. In 4 months, I'd be 63. Clara had been gone for 8 years. I'd wasted 5 of those 8 years being a doormat. I wasn't planning to waste any more. My phone buzzed with a text from Tia Elena. Dinner Sunday. The kids want to show you their school projects. I smiled and typed back, wouldn't miss it. Real family, it turned out, was something you found with people who actually wanted you there. Everything else was just expensive theater. But Daniel's visit had cracked the foundation of my strategy. The unexpected, genuine moment of pride he admitted feeling was a vulnerability ping, my own vulnerability. It risked my belief that he was completely gone. I had to pay that off, not with money, but with a different kind of consequence. His shame was not enough. The solution needed to be structural. The next morning, I drove to the City National Bank branch downtown, not the drive-thru. I walked inside, the marble lobby cold and vast, built to feel like permanence. I asked to speak to a commercial loan officer, Mr. Davis, a man I knew from the Riverton Business Leaders Association. Mr. Reyes, Davis said, shaking my hand across the desk. I saw that piece in the Herald. Nasty business. It was, I agreed. And now I'm here about a nasty piece of business. I slid the notice of default for Daniel's house across the desk. I want to purchase the note. Davis raised an eyebrow. This is highly irregular. It's still early in the foreclosure process. The Sinclairs or Daniel could redeem it. They won't, I said, leaning forward. They don't have the $400 to catch up, let alone the full principal. They've been living on debt and false promises for 5 years. I have the documented proof right here. I tapped my briefcase. I want to bid on the house at the foreclosure auction, and I want an estimate based on the current market and the outstanding principal. Davis looked at the documents, then at the man in the navy suit who had just walked away from $250,000 in family debt. He saw not a broken father, but a strategic opponent. Give me the address. I'll need a day. But if you're serious, we can certainly begin the process. We prefer an easy sale to a drawn-out default. I am serious, I confirmed. I built this city. I know structural integrity when I see it. That house is currently being run by people who think they own a load-bearing wall when they only own a paint job. I stood up. My offer will be final and clean. I expect a call by the end of tomorrow, Friday, 5 p.m., with the full terms. That conversation, quiet and professional, was the real beginning of the endgame. I didn't want Daniel to lose everything. I just wanted him to lose the falsehood he'd built. I drove away from the bank, the clock now ticking not for Daniel, but for the bank itself. If they missed my deadline, I'd walk. I was finally buying something I owned, my peace of mind. Mr. Davis, the loan officer, called me exactly at 4:55 p.m. Friday. He didn't waste time on small talk. Mr. Reyes, we have an initial figure. We are prepared to accept an all-cash offer for the outstanding principal, which includes the back payments plus legal fees. It will be scheduled as a quick private foreclosure sale. The number? I asked, sitting in my kitchen, eating a late dinner I'd cooked myself. Considering the rapid closing timeline, we can finalize at $310,000. The number was fair, slightly below market, reflecting the bank's urgency. Done, I said instantly. I want the closing scheduled within 2 weeks. I need the title clean, and the occupancy clause clearly stated, I will pay all associated fees. The wire transfer would hit the bank by Monday morning. I was buying back the house that had nearly cost me my life. My own life savings, which I'd been planning to use for retirement travel, was now going toward purchasing the very asset that had been the tool of my betrayal. It was the ultimate inverted evidence. The house itself would prove my generosity and their deception. This was the double-price twist. I paid twice, but the second payment bought me leverage, not servitude. I hung up, a strange mix of exhilaration and grim satisfaction surging through me. Daniel and Serena were about to find out the true meaning of consequences. They thought they were losing their home to the bank. They had no idea they were losing it to the man they had scorned. Meanwhile, Daniel was in a panic. The 14-day clock from the notice of default was shrinking rapidly. He had called Mr. Sinclair, who, suffering severe social fallout from the Christmas dinner expose, was in no position to help. "Dad, I can't," Mr. Sinclair had reportedly snapped into the phone. "The bank is scrutinizing all my accounts since that incident. I can't risk putting up collateral for a delinquent loan. You made your bed when you chose that man over your family's well-being." The social consequence of Christmas dinner was now a tangible financial blockade. Daniel's external help had evaporated. Daniel called me again. I let the call go to voicemail. He wasn't asking for money anymore. He was asking for advice. He sounded broken. "Dad, I went to 3 banks. They won't touch me. The debt to income is a mess. What do I do? What is the one thing I can do to save this?" I deleted the voicemail. I couldn't save him, but I could give him the opportunity to face his choice. I knew exactly where the confrontation needed to happen. I spent the next week quietly getting my own ducks in a row. I spoke with Tia Elena. I didn't tell her my plan, only that I was settling a structural debt and needed a witness who understood family integrity. She agreed instantly. The day before the closing, I finally unblocked Daniel's number and sent him a text message. One line. "Daniel, be at the Riverton title office, 11 a.m. tomorrow. Bring Serena. Final chance to talk about the house." I knew he would read that as a desperate lifeline, a chance for the ATM to cough up one final withdrawal. He'd bring Serena and the Sinclairs, thinking they could overpower me with sheer numbers, but they would be walking into a trap of their own making. I bought a new, clean manila folder, ready for the one document that mattered. The closing date was set for 2 weeks away, and the Sinclairs had no idea the house they wanted to save was about to become mine. The Riverton title office lobby was sterile white, smelling faintly of old coffee and fresh paper, the odor of finality. I arrived at 10:50 a.m., 10 minutes early, Tia Elena by my side. She wore a severe black suit and the kind of expression that demanded integrity. My lawyer, a woman I'd trusted for 20 years in my business, was already waiting at the closing table. At 11 a.m., the door burst open. Daniel, Serena, Mr. and Mrs. Sinclair, a defeated army trying to stage a final counteroffensive. Serena was holding a flimsy folder of her own, presumably containing meaningless, outdated paperwork. Mr. Sinclair had that familiar purple hue of manufactured rage. "Arturo!" Serena shrieked. "You can't do this! We got your text. You called us here to fix this." "Fix what exactly, Serena?" I asked, calm as bedrock. My lawyer smiled thinly and gestured for everyone to sit. Mr. Sinclair slammed his hand on the pristine white table. "You snake! You think you can lure us here with false hope? You caused this default. You stopped the payments. It was a $2,800 a month obligation." "You're right," I agreed, my voice cutting through his volume. "I did stop the payments because you told me I wasn't worthy of your company, and you attacked my reputation in the newspaper." I gestured to the lawyer. "We're here to close this loop." The lawyer slid a clean new document across the table. It was the deed of trust. Serena snatched it up. "What is this? A loan renegotiation?" "Daniel, tell him we need the whole $8,400 to catch up, not a new loan." Daniel, pale and defeated, just stared at the table. Serena's eyes widened as she scanned the top line of the document. "Wait, this isn't a loan document. This is a transfer of deed." She looked up, her face draining of color. "What did you do, Arturo?" "I fixed the structural flaw in my life," I said, "and I bought a new asset." Mr. Sinclair lunged forward, grabbing the deed. He read the names. "Grantor, City National Bank. Grantee, Arturo Reyes, LLC. You bought the note?" Mr. Sinclair's voice was a ragged whisper. "You foreclosed on them. You paid the $310,000. "The bank was selling," I said, shrugging. "And I was buying. All cash. The transfer is complete. I own the house." The Sinclairs and Serena exploded in a torrent of accusations, threats, and hysterical denials. They called me heartless, cruel, and everything else in between. But I barely heard it. Tia Elena placed a supportive hand on my shoulder. My lawyer cleared her throat. "The new owner is prepared to offer you an opportunity to retrieve your personal belongings. The house must be vacated within 72 hours. She pushed a printout across the table, a copy of the eviction notice. "You can't evict your own son," Mrs. Sinclair screeched. "I can," I replied, standing up, "and I will. I made a choice 5 years ago to fund a fantasy. Today, I am choosing reality." I looked directly at Daniel, who was watching this scene, silent, from the far corner of the table. He was defeated, but he was finally seeing. "Daniel," I said, "you asked me what the difference was between losing me and giving me away. The difference is the price tag. The house cost $237,468. Your family cost me 5 years of life. I will take the house. You can decide what the people around you are worth." I walked toward the door, Tia Elena following close behind. As I passed Daniel, he looked up, his eyes red. "Dad," he managed, "what about my furniture? What about my family photos?" "They're yours," I said. "But the house is mine. You decide where you put them next." We walked out of the pristine white office and into the strong, clean Riverton afternoon light. I didn't look back. Later that evening, sitting on my own fixed porch, I poured myself a final glass of the good whiskey. Tia Elena was inside, cooking a modest dinner. I raised my glass to the house across town, the perfect house that was now my biggest asset and my greatest proof of boundaries. It was a bittersweet victory because the relationship with my son was irrevocably lost, but my dignity, my solvency, and my self-respect were secured. I smiled, letting the cool spring air wash over me. The whiskey tasted like freedom, and the future was built on ground I owned. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.